here's like the real business part and where like benefit leaders can support the business and not always be overhead. So the nature of Iron Mountain stock changed when I was there and they became a REIT, a real estate investment trust. The analysts changed and they said to the C-suite, your sales general administrative cost, your SG&A is too high to be a REIT. You got to reduce that. And the CEO said, yeah, we'll do that. So they put to the U.S. business every year, you have to find $15 million in cost savings. Well, they had this rolling 3-year business plan, where they said benefit costs are going to go up 2.5%. If every amount that we came under that was immediately went to that $15 million nut that they had to find money for. And every year we gave them between 35 and 54% of that target savings. That was people they didn't have to lay off, investments they didn't have to defer or beg for money. We just handed it to them. They didn't have to do anything, and not changing the plan design, and they loved it. And that's where you can really support the business, and especially now.
Welcome to Broken Benefits. I'm your host, Lee Lewis, and this is a podcast where we learn from top employer experts on how to fix our broken benefits to save lives, save dollars, and save your talent. Welcome back, everyone. So excited about today's guest. We're joined by Scott Kirschner. Scott was recently running the health plan for the largest property management company in the United States, with over $250 million in annual spend. And unlike most benefits leaders, he wasn't just managing for an L or the loss on the P&L, but was also responsible for some profit that came through the health plan. Really excited to have him on the show today. He managed a nearly flat cost trend for multiple years. And so excited to learn from him. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today on Broken Benefits.
Great to see you again, Lee.
Hey, perfect. So let's start out a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the company where you worked and how the fixed budgeting created a different dynamic as a benefits leader.
Yeah, so the company's called Greystar. It's not particularly well known outside of real estate circles, but it's privately held. Been around for going on 33 years, and they manage over 4,000 properties in the United States and virtually every state. And there's about 28,000 U.S. team members, employees. They also have an investment management arm, a development arm that plans new construction, and then a construction arm where they act as the general contractor to build new properties. And it was what most of those 4,000 properties were owned by somebody else. And so part of managing those properties are management fees. And as part of that fee, there was a fixed amount charged for every team member that enrolled in a health plan, no matter which plan and what coverage tier. So the key was really managing actual costs under the amount of that property owner contribution. And that difference, that delta between the two, was counted as what we called surplus, but you or I would think of it as profit. And that really went to the bottom line of the property management business in particular.
Wow, it's almost like you were running a fully insured insurance company where you had the fixed premiums that were coming in, except a fully insured insurance company can maybe just jack their rates up like 20% every year, and I don't think you had that luxury. So how was that? I mean, you probably had a reasonable trend level that was allowed, but what happened when trend was projected to be more than you were allowed to increase?
And that was really the case going into 2026. Costs really started to go up. And I think some of this is I inherited benefit plans from my predecessor, who'd been there 23 and a half of the 26 years that Greystar had been in existence at that point in time. And he was what I call a traditionalist, in that he approached benefits as very administrative, do the basics, do the main stuff. was not particularly, looking at how to better manage the health of the population. And this, really laid out for leadership that our culture really supports long tenure. So there was a lot of long service team members there, and that we had a responsibility to better manage the health of that population, both for trend and for cost management, and to ensure that that property owner charge remained above actual costs. So, there was a lot of opportunities to modernize and do things in a different way. And I think, one of the things you guys are doing at the Health Transformation Alliance, and that you really think about what's available, the tools in that toolbox that we could use to better manage the health of a population are significantly better than they were, say, 15 years ago, when you were so reliant on the health plan and the PBM and your direct vendors, and you just, it was like so much of it is what it is. We'll send more letters. We'll make more phone calls. All those things. And now the opportunities are great. And so I saw it as a great opportunity to, as I called it, modernize and truly have a better impact on things.
Everyone, now just a quick word from today's sponsor.
Hey, Dad, have you seen my PlayStation?
People who work for companies just like yours are desperate for any way to pay their medical debt. Support your employees by giving them 100% medical coverage with Catalyze Health.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so I'm envisioning this. This is 3-4 years ago. You're stepping into this new role. There are a ton of opportunities to modernize and update different processes and technologies that were in place. How did you balance, let's say, the infrastructure enhancements, which aren't that sexy necessarily, but are enabling for you to do more, with, say, strategic enhancements around offerings like clinical programs, centers of excellence, primary care, whatever it might be, changing the PBM?
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I started in September of 2023, we were in the midst of implementing a new payroll, benefits administration, and timekeeping system. And at the same time, the final stages of planning open enrollment for 2024 that began, beginning of November. And so I like parachuted. I felt like I was in the 82nd Airborne on D-Day, parachuting into a hot combat zone, and it was intense. And I think into that environment, it's you get through that period, and then you go live with this benefits administration system that, frankly, was not good and had a lot of issues when it went live in April of 2024. And a very small team to do it with. So I think to that tension, that balancing act between the day-to-day administrative stuff and trying to get people to focus on the long-term, we have to plan. The things that we do today may not pay off for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. But there's a fair number of people who are going to be here 5 years from now. So start planning now. Don't just keep kicking that bucket down, down the road. And there have been a lot of that for years. So it made for, a lot of challenging days. But, yeah.
So take our listeners through this. Let's explore this a little further. So you're now in this role. There's infrastructure that you can update, also clinical programs, offerings, point solutions, technologies. You started putting together a 3 to 5 year roadmap. What were the big ticket items that you looked at, and help us understand which of those items were long term, and which of those were delivering a near term ROI?
So I think some of the near term things were, for example, my predecessor was forced, kind of kicking and screaming, to put in a Centers of Excellence program, and we'll do a shout out for Surgery Plus, and now Lantern, and and you know, I very much believe Centers of Excellence is a great approach to both surgical care and just really directing people to high quality providers with better outcomes and much better contracting. And so they had been so restricted and just operating with hands and feet shackled and um and released those shackles and said, let's start marketing this thing. Let's start really playing it up. Let's improve the travel benefit. Let's do everything we can to raise awareness. And we saw in the first year of better marketing about a 250% increase in cases going through the COE. And that's, it existed. And in talking with somebody else, my analogy was, you bought a Ferrari and you leave it in the garage. It's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where they're just staring at Dad's classic Ferrari, going, "This is a shame." If you embrace these programs, you need to fully embrace them, unleash them, let them do their job, partner with them, support them internally, play up what they're capable of, and you then see the impact.
I was going to say, I want to get to the other strategies that you had in place, but first, we need to zoom in a little bit here. What were things that you did in marketing that were non-traditional that drove this high utilization? Because I'm guessing this was not just some well-designed emails that went out and maybe a couple of postcards. I'm guessing this was a voluntary program, so people weren't required to use it. And so you had to get people to use this without any other, major incentives other than a cost waiver.
Well, we did waive the deductible and coinsurance. And when I first started, we did not have a high deductible health plan with an HSA. We didn't have a high deductible health plan, period. So that did go in 1/1/2025. But not a huge population. But anyway, so there was that incentive too. But I think it really was, people had to find out about it by going to the intranet site where it was buried, and it was on page 32 of a 44-page benefit guide and just a quick blurb. And the awareness of it was
no, that's where stuff goes to die. No one will ever see any of that.
So we started out with basic, just printing mail postcards and started with that. But then I have challenged vendors. One of the things that I recognize and appreciate is the power of video, and I've long done that. So give me short form videos that I can direct people to that explain what you do and the benefit to them. Always answer the question, what's in it for me? If you can't answer the question of putting yourself in the shoes of your target and answering, buddy, what's in it for me? What is it going to, I'm selfish. Then do that. So make these videos and don't use jargon and be overly salesy.
Yeah.
And, you can think about this and it ran the gamut. There was also like a weight loss program that hardly anybody used. We were below every kind of book of business metric because my predecessor did not believe in marketing. You had to go find information, and about half the workforce is not on a computer during the day. So so some of that.
Wow. Okay. So this video thing, this is a great idea. I haven't heard this before. So you asked, let me make sure I'm getting it right. You asked the vendors, hey, I want you to produce some really tight short form video that answers what's in it for me to my employees and their dependents, that we can certainly post online, but even email out or hyperlink to, or tell me how you got these videos into people's hands.
Yeah. And I mean, that was, one part of it was starting to do a microsite to direct people to that. But the next thing we were going to do was we surveyed team members in May and June of 2025. And I specifically put in a question there about, would you be open to getting text messages from Graystar Benefits? Yes, no, maybe. And it was like, with the opportunity to opt out. Only 13% of people said no, flat no. Most people said yes. And I saw that as permission. So we started looking at text messaging services and more the rich context kind of messaging where you could embed pictures and link people to videos much more easily than, say, pure text, SMS texting. And the cost is phenomenally cheap. And,
Wow.
and it's something, there's, a little gray zone around some legal issues, but, one of the things we talked about was, how do we maybe do an active enrollment and then get everybody to agree to terms where part of it is you agree we had pretty much everybody's cell phone number. Let's leverage that. Let's direct people to information that's going to be helpful to them. And then I think one other part of that multi-year plan that was going to be a little bit more of a long-term return on investment was, I do believe in digital navigation. And how do you take data and personalize navigation in a way that, like, just preventive care? Oh my gosh, people.
Yeah.
And looking at, I'll do one other shout out that I made a real strong business case for, and hopefully it does get implemented because I left before it did, but that's Align Marketplace. We don't have enough primary care physicians in this country. And one of the things I learned from the advisory board and their work, working with hospitals and physicians, is most people, and particularly the younger generations, like under 40, they don't have the same level of, just allegiance to a physician that, like, my generation does or our parents' generation does. And they want it to be convenient and accessible. And the least convenient thing in the world is you don't have a strong PCP relationship. You find one in network that's near you and accepting new patients, all those like little hurdles you get over. You call them, hey, I really think it's time for me to get a checkup. I haven't done one in a few years.
Yeah.
And get told, we're making appointments 9 months from now.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Unbelievable.
can I get something this week? I'm thinking about it now.
Yeah.
So, it's like, how do we maybe help people navigate just basic preventive care?
I love this. So this is gold. The idea of using active enrollment, where we bring all of our employees to one portal. And in that portal, as part of what we're doing, it's not just about selling voluntary benefits, despite what, the consultants may sometimes say, but it's about bringing everybody together. And we ask for permission for the kinds of things that we need to do later in the year and for which we don't necessarily have permissions in place, like saying, is it okay if we text message you? This is an important part of us being able to stay in touch. And we capture that. Your lawyers can put in whatever the sign off is they want. That's no problem, but we can insert that screen in there. People then can sign up for it. Heck, I would imagine you could even provide like a discount or even an incentive for people to opt in. And then they input their mobile phone as well, so
they
that
don't
you
even
have
have
the
to
ability
input their
to
mobile
get that
phone.
outreach.
We already had it in Workday and the benefits administration system.
Oh, okay.
It's there.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, that's
we know. And
that's
it's funny,
really
like
exciting.
you would go to the properties. They
Okay.
have walkie-talkies. the people on the properties, I loved going on site visits and talking to the people and seeing how they operate. They all are texting each other. They're not even using the Graystar. Yeah, here's a Graystar
Approved
walkie-talkie.
walkie-talkie. They're just using their
They're all
mobile.
texting each other.
That's
Hey,
funny.
we got an issue in unit, 1409.
And if you think about it, we laugh at that, but seriously, how many times have you been on a Teams call or a Zoom call and somebody's saying something funny or it's a little goofy on the screen or whatever, and you've got people on the call texting each other, not through Teams, but on your mobile phones with all your coworkers. It happens every day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the
So-
time.
You also did the mailers. And then, additional strategies of bringing in the primary care. Were there any other items in the promotion and communication and engagement, in addition to what you've covered right here?
Well, like part of that strategy was very specifically focused on communications and modernizing communications. And, one of the things I appreciate, but also, I make fun of, is too often benefits leaders act in ways like the rest of the world doesn't exist. And this is how we do benefits communication. It's the way we've done things. I hear my grandfather talking, going, it's tradition.
Yeah.
This is how we do things. And it's like, there is a disconnect from how we live in the modern world.
Yeah.
And do you think about all the different ways we actually communicate with each other and be multimodal about it? Use every tool available. And like, you may get a flyer, you may get a postcard, it may be a QR code on there. You may get an email, you may get a text, you may be on a navigation thing and get a little push notification from the app and the navigation.
Yeah.
All of them telling you, you might benefit from this program.
Right.
And here is some simple, easy to use, easy to understand information on what it is and how it can help you.
So this gets us into the sort of provider supplemental networks. You've got your center of excellence that goes in. You've got primary care as sort of the current phase. Now transitioning a little bit over to
Teletherapy.
teletherapy as well. Okay, so yeah, this is perfect. What did you do to enhance and modernize what you were doing for therapy and behavioral health?
Yeah, one metric that I'll just be honest, one metric Graystar is above book of business is behavioral health.
Yeah.
And, I joke that I wish I had $100 for every time the head of a behavioral health unit in a health plan said, we're working on getting more therapists because I, fund my kids' college education.
Yeah.
It is a struggle. Most therapists have robust practices, and they may generally only work with one or two insurers, and it frequently starts with the blues.
Yeah.
And so, the brick and mortar therapists want you on their schedule, whereas teletherapy, it's super convenient, super easy. The wait period isn't there. So, and then I think one of the business cases, we went with Rula. And part of that was Rula's partnered with United Healthcare, so the costs were not a separate line item. They were claims. And behavioral health claims are such a small part of the total pie that, it just moved that needle a little bit. But it dramatically improved access. It became a key part of a better delivery for supporting team members' mental health from, top to bottom, EAP to what could be provided through a health plan, because EAP is just short term and it's more crisis intervention. So, even like further supporting that within the long-term strategic plan, that was an immediate one and almost an immediate return on investment. And very positive feedback from having that available. So, that's like a short-term ROI. That's easy to relatively easy to implement. And when you're not having to deal with invoices from another vendor because they're coming in as claims.
Yeah.
It's like,
this is
it's an additional cost, but in the big scheme of things, if somebody's mental health is better, there have been a number of studies that their physical health frequently improves too, and their productivity goes up, their sick days go down.
It's comorbid into so many different areas. And it makes sense too. Like we've moved into a knowledge economy. Uh, Behavioral health, also known as mental health. Well, what is it? What's the engine of knowledge in any person? It's not your stomach or your leg, it's your brain. It's mental. Like our workforce is using a mental engine all day long. And we're in an environment of so much information, and with so much complexity. Those are the things that get burnt out. We get burnt out mentally, and the physical isn't far behind. And there's so much data on that. One thing that I love here is you really put in kind of the full supplemental triple crown. When we see sort of best practices within large employers, we see that the network supplement that is the pinnacle best practice, we call it ABC, of the Advanced Primary Care Behavioral Health Supplemental Network and a Center of Excellence network. And you really went through, and in 3 years you hit each one of those things and got them covered. I just love that. Let's transition now over to PBM. You also did some work there to do some modernization, make some changes. Tell us a little bit about how you approached that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to laugh a bit because you and I have talked about this a bit.
Some of those for the podcast, some of those for the bar afterwards. That's totally fine. But
I've been dealing with the pharmacy world for a very long time. I began my career in the health plan field and got recruited by Towers Perrin. That's a bit of a throwback name. It still exists as a T in Willis Towers Watson,
right.
but and one of the things I was hired for in the Atlanta office of Towers Perrin back in 1992 was to support the first pharmacist they ever hired. And I learned a lot about the pharmacy world. Now, he learned a lot about modeling because he had a desktop that he never turned on. He had no idea how to use, technology tools. And so it was fascinating to me. I'm like, this is a crazy business.
Yeah.
There is, you take a pill or an injection and it gets manufactured. And how does that ultimately get in the patient's hands? And how does it ultimately get priced and paid for? And it's an incredibly frustrating business. And especially like I've had global roles and I see the rest of the world and it is not nearly the subject here. And, I've long wondered sort of what percentage of profits for global pharma come from the U.S. as a proportion of total profits.
It's got to be enormous.
It's got to be enormous percentage.
We know the gross is massively off scale. The profit margin has to be even more extreme to that.
So, part of it begins with I also inherited a long-term relationship with basically all things United Health Group. So UHC was the administrator, Optum was the PBM. And we were doing an RFP this year, and I was very interested in transparent PBMs, but also looking at things, and I'll give another shout out to things like GoodPath, that, Graystar decided to start covering GLP-1s for obesity, and some of the decision-making I had a hard time with. But I won't belabor that point. But the costs were way over what were projected. And I like this approach of both combining, weight management, behavior management, programs, along with very, best case scenario pricing from, evaluating different sources to dispensing of GLP-1s and getting that in the hands of patients. And I see like the long-term path of development where the concept of how GLP-1s work are being applied to other types of of conditions, you're starting to see it, there might be a GLP-1 for coronary disease and hypertension,
Yeah.
and some other areas.
They're just
And
going to keep coming.
and so you really have to think about it. And I think, uh, so even thinking about how do you potentially carve out parts of what you're covering in pharmacy and doing that in different ways. But even like, you know, um, do you really, I mean, there's some interesting stuff here. I mean, like reimportation. Do we revisit that, like getting stuff from Mexico and Canada? Do
Sure.
we really look at like cost plus drugs? I was on a webinar that Mark Cuban was doing yesterday
Yeah.
for one of the groups, and and
Yeah.
he had no filters, but
Yeah.
there, and I argue, everything that they have right now are generics, and saving costs on
Right.
generics it's pennies and nickels, but
Yeah. It's so small. I heard a good Promote John over at Vivio says this sometimes, where he'll say, like, you could give 90% of all medications away for free, and it would still only be 16-17% of your spend. For 9 out of 10 people to have totally free medication, it's that small when compared to the big ticket items. And so you're not going to get big financial savings in that category. But the flip side of that is, well, if you're not going to save money necessarily in that category, could you eliminate a ton of complexity? And it's like, oh, that's like an interesting take on it. So I love that. Okay, so moving into
that's an
new ways
interesting
to do
take
the
on it. Yeah.
PBM. Yeah, oh yeah.
And
And
and I think one of the things, it's funny, one of your other guests was really involved in the policy side of things,
Mhm.
and how do you get, and we are the one developed country that has created all of these roadblocks to
Mhm.
changing policy based on lobbying by groups like pharma, AMA, AHA, and
Mm.
you know in certain ways, I think cleaning up the pharmaceutical world and the PBM world, it's, we can push things, and we can maybe take away the market share of the big three. And if that competition really increases, I almost liken it to when the Japanese automakers first were coming to the US. Detroit
Yeah.
didn't worry. Who are
Yeah.
these companies? Honda and Nissan and Toyota. They're nothing.
Yeah.
And they got their lunches eaten,
Yeah.
and they had to compete. And
Yeah.
competition is a good thing. So I think
Totally.
as decision makers, one of the first steps that we can take in the here and now is RFP, really look at the alternative marketplace from the big three. And maybe the numbers are close even to the big three, but even supporting that competition and working closely with the transparent PBMs, like I've really
Yeah.
liked what some of them are doing. Change your formulary. Really, maybe even work with a specialty consulting firm to design a custom formulary for you.
Yep.
And work for it. And like, I will use one good example, which is, starting to look at just even basic data that came out of Optum.
Mm.
Notable expense for Stelara. Well, Stelara has two biosimilars that are 20% of the cost.
Wow.
And
Why?
there's only 16 people taking Stelara. Cut it. Get it out of there. I mean, literally, it took like something like 1.1 million out of expense on an annualized
Wow.
basis. And you know how many of those 16 people complained? None.
Wow.
Zero. Do it. Get some really good pharmacists to go through the formulary step by step with somebody, one of these, much more flexible PBMs, and start cutting away at things. And that's like one of Cuban's arguments, is really getting the details of things. And I think one other, investment that I put in that long-term strategy I was pushing for from early on, but wasn't getting the funding for. So really had to get the consultants to partner with me on this. We changed consultants beginning 1/1/25 after an RFP last year. And a big part of that was better data and a data warehouse. The standard reporting, even the ad hoc reporting coming out of United, Optum, et cetera, it's okay, but it doesn't tell you a lot. And it doesn't really compare much to what's possible. And so get your hands on your data and get somebody on your team that really starts to understand data analytics, and somebody at the consulting team, and the two of them partner up.
Yeah.
And create that story.
Cora Upsall has a really cool saying about about hiring an analyst that I've shamelessly stolen. Was she said every benefits team, every serious benefits team should have a great data analyst that's dedicated, and that person will always pay for themselves unless you hired the wrong one. But if you hired the right one, will always pay for themselves many, many times over. And I've seen that to be true.
I will give you an even better example, Lee. So when I started at Iron Mountain, one of the people on the team that I inherited was great, but quiet and not particularly happy with her career. Had a lot of potential. And just in like getting to know her, she really was good understanding data, super strong with Excel, and she wanted to get better at data analytics. I got the budget to send her to graduate level data analytics courses at night at Boston University.
Wow.
And so invested in her to get better at the tools to then deliver. And so to your return on investment on a person on the team, I got more than that back, both in paying her more and promoting her and better bonuses, but also in what we paid to send her back to school at night.
Yeah. That's terrific lesson. It's not always about hiring someone new. You can often train the people you have to be able to fill those roles in order to be able to bring those together. I love that.
Most people want to develop. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want to get better. And, if some of it is, let's help you get better educated by a professional in analytics, let's do it.
Oh, I love that. What were the results? So you came in, and in 3 years, you added supplemental networks in the primary care, behavioral health, surgical COE, centers of excellence. You added changes in some of the infrastructure around the admin systems. You overhauled the communications. What were the results after all this?
And I would add one more, and that is in June of 2025, we also went live with Lantern's cancer care program. And I think part of the business case from that is cancer and maternity were number 1 and 2 major diagnostic category, and they keep flipping depending on the month you looked at. But you think about cancer treatment in this country, and the health plans, the plan administrators, I don't know anything. They pre-auth a few things. Yeah. It's almost always a rubber stamp.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
It's it. And
we've even heard that the J codes often don't have allowed amounts. That they don't even add an allowed amount to it. It's just whatever gets billed.
So, and that's another like long-term investment where you don't immediately see the impact of getting somebody into a cancer care program. But I really like where they're doing that. So also starting to support that. And so those were things we're putting. But, like I said, some of what was really proposing over the next 3 years was that care navigation, or like just that general benefits navigation. We and then one you and I have talked about some, I'm going to touch on in a second, but then another part of this was um, I really believe that one of the issues with the US healthcare system is we have created overly complex coding systems between ICD-10 and the latest version of CPTs, and it has become an arms race of coding between providers and the health plans. And there are a couple of organizations out there that have really launched, monthly audits of all of your claims using very sophisticated tools to much better look at this stuff. And they're finding 2 to 4%, but also like in conjunction with the data warehouse, do you really start to better identify some of the opportunities of, we got to get this out of United Healthcare. And, and it may start leading to mandatory care. We started to do some mandatory things with Lantern. But even more mandatory, like surgical care, or does it really support the idea of where it makes sense? Let's get out of the broad network. Let's just completely go to any kind of value-based contracting we may have, and do we start to look at market by market by who has the most advantageous? And sometimes, it is like Graystar didn't have the critical mass in any market to be able to do direct contracting. But I think you really, if you can really leverage that, I mean, I absolutely. So one of the things I've done in my career was I spent 5 years on the board of directors of the second largest accountable care organization in Massachusetts. And there are 2 non-physician, non-hospital administrators on it. And I saw so much about the inner workings of value-based and risk-based contracting and how providers operate, especially when there's downside risk and there are penalties for not managing cost and achieving the quality outcomes. And then that will really, all the bonuses in the world, they won't change their practice patterns. But you hit them with penalties, man.
One
penalty. That like changing. So, I really believe in that too. So how do we better look at this between like monthly audits, better data analysis, better people to help analyze that data? Do you start to say, we got to get out of the broad networks?
Everyone, now just a quick word from today's sponsor.
Hello.
Hi, I'm here to pick up a prescription.
Okay. Okay, your total is $80.
But I have insurance.
We ran your insurance, that's just your copay.
Can you hold on to that for me? I'll be back later.
58 million American adults can't afford their prescriptions. Many of these people work for companies just like yours. Start giving your employees 100% medical coverage with Catalyze Health.
Yeah, that starts to really open things up. It's interesting. It feels like you can only really do that strategy well if you have trust, because if you talk to patients, and you say, which doctor do you want, or how do you think about all the doctors, right, that are there? It's essentially having a network conversation. People will say, our default is, everybody wants to have the broadest network possible. You want to have no disruption ever. You want every doctor included. But when you talk to people, that's not what they say. They say, everybody wants the same doctor. And they say, I want the good one. I want the best one. That's the doctor I want. I want the best doctor, the good one, the best expert in this field, or the most proficient and experienced in my illness, whatever it is. And in the absence of knowing the good one, you demand all of them. And that is what happens, is we don't show the good one, and so people retreat to all of them, because then I know at least the good one is in. If I've got every fish in the sea, I know the good one is in there, and I'll be able to use that one. But if I trust you and you've provided the information to me on who is good, then I don't need to have everyone in the network. I have the good, because you're going to make sure that I have the good one.
And that's part of the beauty of the COE network. And I'll tell you a story, and this you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
So, like I told you, when I joined Iron Mountain in 2013, it was insane. PEPM costs higher than any measure, and a trend that was horrible. Going back as far as I could see, they're just coming off of a 13.4% increase in the working rates for the self-insured plan. I laid out a 4-year strategy to begin with, first strategy, and part of that was embracing high performance, narrow networks, going much more value-based contracting. And what I did as part of this was, this is how I structured things. So and appreciate depending on when you measure, about 71 to 73% of the workforce at Iron Mountain in the U.S. is hourly back then. And, so what we did in the markets where it made sense to implement this, we worked with the benefits administration partner, BSWIT, to make open enrollment a 2-step process. And we did did basically an active enrollment like every 3 years. So step one was, which of the health plan designs you want? Because talking to those hourly people, they were more concerned about something happens to me, how much am I going to have to pay out of pocket? They generally wanted the better coverage. And so step one was,
yes, and they should. They need to insure for shock claims because they don't have a lot of dispensable cash.
Predictability. Take it out of my paycheck, and then I have predictability. So
yes.
So that was step one in the enrollment process. Step two was, here was your cost in the big network. Here's your cost in the high performance narrow network. And what we did was a defined contribution. Iron Mountain said, we're going to give the same amount to everybody. And with the expectation that the working rate for the high performance network was actually too high compared to what the actuals would be. And that frequently worked out. Anyway, show it to people both on a biweekly per paycheck basis and an annual basis. Because that per paycheck amount, and that's the way most benefit administration systems are, it doesn't feel like as much pain. But when you show, you will save $3,000-$4,000 a year covering your family in this smaller network with the exact same health plan, and you're making $28 an hour, like, sign me up.
Wow. That's a great strategy. And if I have already chosen my plan design, I don't get lost in the Sturm und Drang of it all, of like, oh, well, do I like that logo of network and I like this plan design and these dollars? It's like, no. Choose your plan design first based on your financial situation. Before we talk money, let's choose what plan design is best.
Decision support tools that will tell you maybe like the medium plan is the right plan for you.
Yes. And so now I'm like, okay, I want that plan. And then it's like, okay, now let's talk network, broad versus narrow. Same plan design. That's already been taken off the table. So now we're just looking at broad versus narrow, and I can see the annual cost impact to me. And it's like, oh, wow, now we've really opened up.
I can buy a lot of stuff with $3,000 back in 2015.
Wow. Okay, now before we go, I want you to tell us, because you got unbelievable results, both at Iron Mountain and then again at Graystar. Tell us a little bit about the savings results that you were able to create at each firm.
I tell people, this is the easy one. Historic trend was 10.8% a year, going back about 11 years prior to my joining. And that included, I started January 2013.
Okay.
We averaged trend over the next 6 years of 1.7%, and we had years that we were negative trend. We did not change plan design.
So no cost shift. You weren't just tossing giant deductibles on
we
people.
weren't taking the easy way out. We were getting people healthier. We were getting people into high performance networks. We were really directing people to better care, and just a litany of things. And here's like the real business part, and where like benefit leaders can support the business and not always be overhead. So the nature of Iron Mountain stock changed when I was there, and they became a REIT, a real estate investment trust. The
Okay.
analysts changed, and they said to the C-suite, your sales general and administrative cost, your SG&A is too high to be a REIT. You got to reduce that. And the CEO said, yeah, we'll do that. So they put to the U.S. business every year, you have to find $15 million in cost savings. Well, they had this rolling 3-year business plan, where they said benefit costs are going to go up 2.5%. If every amount that we came under that was immediately went to that $15 million nut that they had to find money for. And every year we gave them between 35 and 54% of that target savings. That was people they didn't have to lay off, investments they didn't have to defer or beg for money. We just handed it to them. They didn't have to do anything, and not changing the plan design, and they loved it. And that's where you can really support the business, and especially now. I mean, we are looking at some super painful renewals, and your audience and my peers, they're all talking about, okay, we need to do stuff now. We need to come up with a plan for how are we going to address this coming year. And you need to, back to that toolkit idea, look at that toolkit and say to yourself, are there things that we haven't tried and we haven't leveraged, and maybe we need to deploy them really quickly to get ahead of this, because there's going to be some angry leadership and some really tough conversations coming up. And I think in certain ways that increasing payroll contributions and decreasing coverage, increasing the patient costs, that has been so tapped out in ways.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you keep doing that?
Yes, we can't cost shift anymore. There's nothing left to shift. It's too much. Nobody can afford it. You've got to innovate to get cost out of the system. And that's exactly
and I think
what
like
you
what
did.
you guys are doing is like a great starting point to start to say, change the system.
Yeah.
Don't just play at the margins and throw it back at the patients and your employees. Change the system. Don't accept the status quo of it.
I love that. And balance, and I think you gave a really good example of this, is balancing both the short-term and the long-term savings. That you make good decisions for both, and you'll get good results on both. And
I really believe in communications. And I think too frequently my peers feel like they're intruding. And, and they'll say like, well, a couple people complained. How many employees do you have? Well, we have 30,000 employees.
Yeah.
It's like if 5 people complain, that is nothing. Like, get worried when 500 complain.
Yeah. Way more people than that believe in Bigfoot in your population. Like, let's be real. That's not
Yeah.
I love this. Okay, this is a wonderful place to stop, really to illustrate how much potential there is here. Scott, this has been terrific. If somebody wants to work with you, learn more about you, can they reach out on LinkedIn? Is there any preferred way for them to be able to find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm now independent again, you can. I have my firm, Threshold Range Consulting. I'm big cyclist, and so there's the concept of the threshold range and training. That's where it comes from, and that's where the website is and stuff. But Lee,
Awesome.
Always great to talk to you. Always great to see you. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thanks so much. And everybody, if you enjoyed this as well, Please forward to friends, and thanks for joining us here on Broken Benefits. Thanks for joining us on Broken Benefits. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or on your favorite podcasting platform. Also, please share today's show with a friend or colleague. It's free to do, and it helps us spread the message to as many people as possible. Until next time.